Hello everyone, my name is Alicia Jade and welcome back to the Get Me Off podcast. Hello everyone, my name is Alicia Jade and welcome back to the Get Me Off podcast. Today I'm going with another solo episode because there's a few things I want to talk about to do with relationships, self-help, things that I've learned recently, and just a good subject that I feel like we all need to talk about a little bit more. Now, as someone who recently came out of quite a long-term relationship, quite a serious relationship, obviously I was engaged, I am now not engaged. I feel like there's so many things that you can learn while you're in a relationship, but there's also a lot of things that you need to learn when you're single and potentially not looking to date. So the topic of subject today is the single phase. Now, I class this differently to what some people would call a hoe phase, because a single phase to me is more about finding yourself and finding what you like and being grounded in yourself, rather than a hoe phase being about dating people or sleeping with people or that kind of thing. So to me, they're two very, very different things. In general, obviously, most people end up in relationships or wanting a relationship, like a long-term relationship with marriage and kids and things like that, as that's what I guess we're sort of told or advertised to, that is the thing to do. And to be fair, by nature, we are kind of social creatures. We want to be around people, which is why for a lot of people, lockdown was so difficult, because a lot of us were on our own and we didn't have anyone to connect with or talk to physically with us. Obviously, phones are great and Zoom is great and things like that, but we need actual human connection, especially when you feel someone's energy or you just want to give someone a hug, or just chatting to somebody in person is so different to anything virtually. I feel like that's something that is built in us as a species. Like on a cellular level, we just like being around people sometimes. But there's a limit to that also. I feel like we can have too much contact with other people, and then we need time away with ourselves to process our thoughts, process our emotions, and just kind of go with ourselves and sit with ourselves. Now, I feel like having a single phase, not a hoe phase, a single phase for a lot of people can be quite scary, because it forces you to sit with your own thoughts and really get to know yourself. And if there are any parts of you that you have been avoiding or masking, or maybe putting a little plaster over when it should have been something that you did some deeper work into, it can really bring those things to the surface. And there's a lot that you tend to, I guess, deny in daily life. So you think, oh, maybe I'm okay with that behavior just to keep that person in my life, or just to keep this job and things like that. However, when you actually sit down and think about it, you think, well, this thing doesn't actually make me happy. So what does make me happy? And then obviously things come up to do with past trauma or feelings or anything of the sort. And it can really be quite daunting to just sit with yourself and process all of these emotions and these feelings, because emotions and feelings are different. They are different things. And although sometimes the lines can be blurred, you have to sit with it, and you just have to, well, without sounding cringy, you have to feel the emotions. I also think it's amazing when people have relationships from sort of school age up until their like 50s, 60s, and they stay with each other. And this, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I feel like maybe 20, 30 years ago, people would work through hardships in a relationship. So they'd go, right, we're together, let's work through this. Nowadays, because there's so much choice out there and we have social media and dating apps and all of these different kind of things, people don't tend to work through so much stuff. Like if there's a bump in the relationship or a bump in the road or a bump in the talking stage, people nowadays would be more likely to step away from that and go, okay, well, I have these 5 other women or 5 other men that I can talk to that I was keeping on the back burner. Or I can go and follow these 5 other people and they're probably going to follow me back, and then I'll start talking to them. Instead of actually investing in a real connection with someone. And to be honest, that sometimes can be avoidance of having difficult conversations and facing parts of yourself that you might not want to face. Now, there are two sides to this for me. I thought I was very one-sided in thinking that everybody needed a single phase to figure out their own emotions and what they want from life and how they feel about things. But there's only so much, what I've learned recently is there's only so much healing you can do by yourself. There are going to be times when people trigger you and it's a feeling and an emotion that you thought you had worked through. However, being triggered by this person has brought up the same things you thought you healed. We are all a work in process. Nobody is ever work in process. We are all a work in progress. No one is ever fully healed because you grow and evolve and you have new experiences and you are a product of your environment at the end of the day, a lot of the time, because of all of these influences that are coming in. So if you don't have time to sit with yourself and process all of that stuff, then it can be quite difficult to figure out what actually to your core is making you happy or what you believe or what you feel, because there's so much outside influence. I'm not somebody who meditates at all, but I do process emotions in other ways. So I'll use things like music or like exercise, or I love going for a really long drive in my car and just putting music on. And that's when I think through a lot of stuff. And everyone has a different way of sort of going through their emotions, but it can be difficult, but I definitely think it is necessary. So the other side of that is obviously when you then go back out into the world after working through stuff, say for example, it's friendships or family relationships or romantic relationships. If there's a certain situation or a certain pattern of behavior that does trigger you, going away and working on that on your own isn't enough. And this is something I have personally learned in the last, however long, in the last month and a half, something like that. Because once you go back into that situation, you are fully giving it the beans because you think, I'm healed, I've got this, I'm absolutely fine, I've worked through this. But as soon as you get triggered, all logic goes out the window. I'm someone who is studying psychology. However, when it comes to emotions, it's still extremely difficult to use your logical mind over your emotions. There is so much knowledge in my head of how I should and shouldn't behave in certain situations, and I failed. And I had to sit with myself for a good week to realize that I failed at that. I don't know if failed is the right word. I am using that word with myself because I know better. It's like knowing the answer to a sum, but you still write the wrong one. It's like, why would I do that? Why would I do that? I know the right answer. So no matter how much healing and working on yourself you can do on your own in the single phase, there will come a certain time when you will have to go back into the world and try and implement that knowledge, but also not beat yourself up for not carrying it out in the way that you thought you would, because it's difficult to be a human being. It's really fucking hard. Apologies for the language, but it is. It's really difficult. And then you have the influence of other people around you and their emotions and their feelings and their thoughts on things. And sometimes that just skews your view. So I think it's important for a single phase to keep you grounded, absolutely, and to do as much work on yourself and figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you want, what you don't want, and this will change over time. So there will be moments where it might not be a single phase in the sense that you take a year off of dating. You might be in a relationship, but you might also need to do some inner work. But I guess that doesn't count as a single phase. I'm just saying that you don't stop growing even after you get into a relationship. I was also watching a podcast yesterday, I think it was. I did share it on my Instagram story, but it's a Michael B. Beckwith podcast with a guy called Cease. I can't remember, but it was really good. And it was, so his podcast was called Taking Back Your Mind. And it was all about keeping grounded and having your own vibrational frequency when going into other situations. So he was talking about, for example, you are manifesting things and you're trying to reach these things and get these goals. Maybe if it's a single phase, you're trying to find a relationship and you're actively dating, or you're wanting to date and just maybe not knowing if you're ready. He was talking about how the universe will give you something to show you this is the thing that you asked for, but then it can also easily be taken away because you need to feel empowered enough on your own without that thing and stay grounded enough on your own, because at any point that thing could go, and you need to be empowered enough and okay on your own without that thing. It doesn't mean you don't want it, and it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt when it leaves or when it goes. But if you're constantly worried about losing that thing, you're living in a state of worry. So the single phase to me is all about being okay on your own, so that when something good does come along, it doesn't take up all of your time and it doesn't take up all of your energy, because you still have enough on your own that you feel secure. And I think that's something that we all aim for, is to feel secure, whether we're in a relationship or whether it's in a job or whether it's with friendships, family, with ourselves. We all want to feel secure and safe. And that's a really, really big thing. Obviously, the most secure attachment style is called the secure attachment style, because you are not anxious to find when it leaves or to find bad things about it, and you're not avoiding it because you maybe think you're not ready for it or you're not worthy of it, or all of these different feelings that can contribute to those things. You are secure with it because you are secure in yourself. And that is probably one of the biggest things that can impact your life, is how you feel about yourself. When I was diagnosed with panic disorder, general anxiety disorder, and agoraphobia, this is maybe, I don't know how many years ago, this was in about 2017, 2018. The main thing for me, and the main reason it was so bad, is because I felt like I had let myself down. I placed such high expectations on my career, me finding a relationship, all of these different things. And when that didn't happen, I wasn't secure enough in myself, because I hadn't done the work, that I was okay without those things. And I am okay without these things, because I am here, I'm doing my thing, I am getting on with life, I'm pushing forward, and that's okay. But it did take the time for me to sit down and think about what I really want, which again, I will mention, can change over the years, and to think about what that means to me. Does it mean that I think I'm, like, say for example, if I'm reaching for a goal, am I reaching for that goal just to be worthy to someone or to prove something to someone? Or am I doing it to make myself happy? Because if I'm doing it from an empty place, then it's not going to work. And if I'm doing it from a place of actually this brings me joy, then it's probably going to stay. So obviously the single phase in general relates to more kind of romantic relationships, which also can be great to look at, because if you're trying to date, or you're going to actively date, or you're thinking about embarking on a new relationship, you want to know, is this person right for me? And what does that entail? So for example, how do they meet my needs? Well, what are my needs? What do I need to feel secure and to feel safe? Do I need someone who is reassuring, who helps me with chores and tasks, who can sit and listen to me rant at the end of the day if I've had a bad day? What do those things entail? Because if you don't know what you're actually looking for to fulfill those needs in yourself, you could end up dating people that trigger you in an anxious way, but you don't know why. And then I guess it ends up being blamed on the other person because they did this and they did that and their behavior was this. When in actual fact, if you haven't communicated your needs because you don't know what they are, that can be very difficult for somebody to try and fulfill, because you're not sending out the right signals and you're not sending out the right messages of what you actually do want. And I think this is a lot how people end up in relationships with people that just make them feel uneasy, and you don't know why they make you feel uneasy. And that's the feeling of not being secure, because you don't know what it is, but something that they're doing is not fulfilling a need within you. Learning how to communicate those needs is the next big step, because depending on who the other person is, that depends on how they receive it. But if you come from an authentic place, which is the best place you can come from and the only place you really should come from, and you authentically say, this is what I need, this is what I have to be fulfilled and secure from my romantic partner. If you are not willing to meet those needs or fulfill those needs, it's probably best we don't go any further, because in that case, you're probably not compatible. So how do you figure out what your personal needs are? Some of it, as I say, will come up from things like being triggered. This could be from a family member, from a friend, from someone that you're dating, from a work colleague. These things can come from anywhere. If anybody makes you feel anxious or there's a behavior that's making you feel uneasy, it's probably because it's triggering something in you that is not meeting a need. So it's good to sit with these things and think, well, why is this making me feel uncomfortable? Why is this not meeting my own personal needs? Why is this triggering me? Why does this feel uncomfortable? And maybe think through the process of, okay, well, what does this bring up? And what is this making me think of? Why is this making me angry? Because anger is a secondary emotion that usually comes from something like shame or sadness or anger is secondary. Anger comes afterwards. So if you're being triggered and angered by someone, is it because they're making you sad? Is it because they're highlighting something that you're insecure or shamed about or shameful? I don't know the right way to say that. But shame is a really interesting concept, and I am trying to explore that more myself also. But there can be insecurities and shame that we hold that we don't realize that we hold, and those emotions come out in different ways. So for example, if the person you're dating says they would like to date other people and that makes you feel uncomfortable, figuring out why that makes you feel uncomfortable will help you to be able to communicate your needs better. So for example, you could turn around and say, well, actually, I would prefer to date one person at once. If that's something that you're not comfortable with, that's not meeting my needs. So let's either talk about it or let's not do this, because you have to figure out where it's coming from in order to have an answer and in order to communicate that answer with somebody else so that they feel they're on the same level ground as you, as long as they're being authentic also, because you never really know. And that's what's very, very difficult. But having that phase of figuring yourself out and working out these triggers is so important, and it will help in so many different areas of life, not necessarily just romantic relationships. I feel like I've waffled, and I feel like I've probably not made much sense in this episode. However, it's just something that I feel that I needed to say, because yes, I'm encouraging people to have a single phase if you are not in a relationship, or you're just recently out of a relationship, or you feel like you're dating and you're not getting anywhere, and that kind of thing. I'm such an advocate for that. But from recent experiences, I do also think doing the whole I'm not going to ever date anymore because I don't like the way people behave and it doesn't match with me and that kind of thing, sometimes is a good chance to look inwards and say, well, actually, why are all of these things not working out? Why is this upsetting me? Why is this triggering me? Because then you can figure out how best to go back into that world, because you're always going to encounter people that you would want to talk to or date or flirt with or whatever. You're always going to encounter those people throughout life. So in order to best handle that situation, you have to know what you need and you have to know what you want. And the only way to do that is to sit and think about yourself. Be selfish for once. Figure out what you want. But it is difficult. It's not easy. And it is a never-ending journey. So if you have any thoughts on this, or you want to have a conversation about this, leave a comment on the video, message me on Instagram, all of those kind of things, because I find it very interesting. Everybody's journey is different, but we're all here to enjoy it. So I hope that helped filter some thoughts for some people. But thank you so much for listening. And I will leave you with a quote from a reel that I found recently. And I've sent this to so many people because I think it's so important and I absolutely love it. So let me read it out for you. Or maybe I'll just play it for you. That's what I'll do. So this is from a guy called Nick Baitar Official. I think that's how you say his name.
Stonewall your woman, she'll know before you fucking know about it, right? They're very intuitive creatures, and that's one of their methods that they've had to develop. The weapon of the feminine is manipulation. The gift of the feminine is intuition. The weapon of the masculine is aggression. The gift of the masculine is security. That's our job, security. When it's imbalanced, then it can go spill off into all kinds of things. So we need to make it very clear. Women love clarity. It's like, this is where I'm going. You can come with me or not, right? So as an example, clarity is very important. It switches over or is transposed into daily life where it's like, babe, I'm feeling fucked. And I just want you to know it's got nothing to do with you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out into nature. I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go for a hike. I'm going to go punch the bag, whatever it is, for 30 to 60 minutes. And I promise you I'll come back to you and let you know how I'm feeling. And then if I'm ready to talk about it, I will. But I just want you to let you know that I'm okay and it's got nothing to do with you. That's leadership. That's clarity. That's being a man. That's owning it, taking care of it. Testosterone says I'll handle it. Estrogen says I need help.
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Gem of information. So thank you very much for listening, and I will see you again in the next episode. Have a great rest of your day.